Well, welcome to this edition of BC Strategies Industry Buzz podcast. This is totally unplanned and unscripted. We may have other people drop in, but thank you to the BC Strategies experts who have joined already. We are going to recap our biggest takeaways from Enterprise Connect 2024, which was just last week, although it both seems like it was a long time ago and a short time ago. So we are bringing in Dave Michaels and Ted Colton. So welcome. So I'm going to be the host for this, and we're going to get, kind of the different expert opinions. One of the things that I love about BC Strategies is it is this elite group of independent analysts, consultants, and thought leaders, and we all see the same thing and have different takeaways. And I think that that's, what we're going to discuss. So let me start. I mean, there's no question that the key theme was about, AI. I gave two sessions, one on Teams and Copilot, and another that looked at all the different AI assistants. AI was everywhere. I said I was in your cornflakes, and there was rumors that the toilet paper had AI infused at the Gaylord Palms this year. Um, but I also found that I can include my husky Kai, and he has AI. I didn't realize that. So Kai, all this time I've been
Animal
talking about
intelligence.
AI in the background, just like what a lot of the vendors said. And I shared a chart that tried to, it wasn't intended to compare the different AI assistants, but of course you put it in a chart, and all the vendors gave me grief that they didn't like, how this was. But certainly, AI was a theme. But thinking back on it, and I'll wait to hear what the other experts say. What I have thought about in the last whatever it is, 4 or 5 days since it ended, um, was really, the transition when we went from, kind of the analog to VoIP, and how all this new terminology and skill sets that both the kind of enterprise leaders and IT pros had to learn. And I think, this is a similar transition where, if you're an IT pro, you really do need to start understanding large language models, and, what does it mean to train the models, and how do they learn, and what is grounding, and a whole bunch of different terminology. Because having spoken at AI about AI at Enterprise Connect and before, there's a lot of misinformation and misinterpretation, both by the vendors, and I think it's unintentional, but this is complicated. So I think that this is a fantastic transition. Now, I didn't get to spend enough time on the show floor, so I'm going to ask the other experts to chime in on this. But one of the things that I did want to call out, I did go, this was, there was lots of vendor booths, but this OpenFin, one of the things that I liked about this, and this is, they integrate contact center apps in a unique way on the desktop. But what I really liked about this was to see right at the top, like they've got this guarantee. So I really like this quantitative, they promise a 20% boost in workflow efficiency in your contact center, or it's kind of like a money back guarantee. So, I thought, sometimes you walk by the booths and you're not really sure what they're doing, and they don't have something to pull you in. But I found that very, very interesting. So that was one of the things that I wanted to call out. So with that, um, Robert Harris, one of the experts, was going to join us, but he unfortunately lost his voice, which I think just goes to show how much all of the BC Strategies experts talked at Enterprise Connect. By my count, we had at least 18 sessions that we collectively delivered, which is, I think, the group that delivered the most sessions. So with that, what I'd like to do is I'm going to pass the baton over to somebody who is never at a loss for words and is always happy to disagree with pretty much everything I said. So Dave Michaels, over to you.
Oh, it's not fair because there's nothing to disagree with yet.
Oh,
So you got to
sure.
put Blair on first. Then I got plenty to talk about. But um, I guess I will disagree just with one thing you said, Kevin, which is kind of a low number. Um, I think that last year EC23 was the AI show. Certainly AI was big at this show, but it didn't feel like it was as big last year, because last year generative AI was, technically about 6 months old for most of us, but mainstream maybe 3 months old, and there was a lot of curiosity, a lot of excitement. And I remember, the number one question leaving EC23 was, are agents doomed? Do we still need to have agents? Because we've seen how great generative AI can respond to almost anything. It was just so natural. That seems to all be gone, right? We didn't see a single keynote that talked about displacing agents. Reality has kind of kicked in. It's really much more around employee-facing stuff like Copilot and GitHub and almost all the stuff we saw in the contact center, agent assistants. It was or supervisor assistants or reports. It's all employee productivity stuff, and I think that the hype and excitement around getting rid of your agents and having a full self-service environment, I think that's all dissipated, and that's good. I think so we're past peak hype in terms of enterprise communications. Generative AI is still going on a peak, but I think in terms of enterprise communications, I think we're past the peak.
Okay, no, that's good. And just disagreeing with one thing I said, that may be a record. So I'm going to go over to Blair and Blair. What were your key takeaways? Dave said there wasn't. We're past the hype of, I don't know, Gen AI in the contact center or what have you. But what did you see and hear?
Well, so I saw tons of things about the metaverse. Just kidding. So, a couple of years ago, we thought, everything would be about the metaverse. And I think I heard the term once, maybe. Obviously.
That was good.
So obviously everything was about AI and Gen AI. And Dave and I had a long talk yesterday, and we are actually in total agreement, if you can believe it or not.
Well, explain why we had the long talk. Yeah.
Okay, so during the lock note, Dave had mentioned about generative AI and LLMs not being used, or that no one should ever use it, and it's not being used for customer-facing interactions. So we kind of had a discussion about, well, what do you really mean by that? Because there are situations, and we talked about Cognigy, they do have some use cases where their LLMs are being used and Gen AI to communicate with the customer. So it's not, you're not using LLMs to come up with the answers and go into the knowledge base and everything. It's more, you're using it to sound better when you're interacting with the customer, to make the knowledge or the response sound a little better. So we kind of went through that a little bit, and it was a deep dive into that. But so anyway, Dave and I are in agreement that customers. I feel at this point, Dave feels never. So companies should not use generative AI and LLMs for customer-facing things and interacting with customers. I'm assuming the day will come when we will be able to do that, but right now we're not there because there are hallucinations, there are mistakes. There are lots of things making the news now. There was Canada Air. Dave posted an article about New York City and their chatbot and how it really screwed up and gave wrong information. So we just have to be really careful about how we use it. So Dave and I are in total agreement that for back office things like Agent Assist, Gen AI and LLMs are awesome, and companies are using them and should continue to use them, and it's just going to keep getting better. And then on the UC side of things, or knowledge workers, certainly summaries, although I haven't found the meeting summaries to be quite too useful yet, because I'm a good note taker, as most of you know, and my notes are much better than what the AI can do. But there are certainly use cases where we're seeing that, and we definitely saw a lot of proof points during Enterprise Connect, during the keynotes and different sessions, and customers talking about what they're doing, and so we really are starting to see some proof points. And one thing. I think I probably did one of the very, very few sessions that wasn't on AI. So I did a session on the integration of UC and CC. And one thing I was really happy about was during the opening session with Eric Kraft and Jim Burton, the first question to the panelists was about the integration of unified communications and contact center. And I was like, yes, they're talking about, the topic that, I've been, so involved in for many years. So we really are seeing that, so many customers are talking about, or companies are talking about it, and customers are starting to really talk about it too. Melissa, I don't know if you want to talk about what you're seeing as far as customers and their RFPs, but we definitely know that the integration of UC and CC is here. So I'll have more to add, but let's go to
I
other
want to hear
people.
more about that, and maybe from Melissa as well.
Yeah.
But I didn't hear the session you were referring to with Jim. But I just want to ask a question. I don't want, I already presented some of my thoughts, but I want to ask a question about that because I didn't hear that, and I was thinking about that. We have NICE, Five9, Genesis, strong contact center companies that don't do UC, and they weren't on they didn't do keynotes. And so I'm curious if that was, Gartner is still, positioning all the companies that do UC and CC together in the niche quadrant, whatever. So did we get a selection bias maybe because of the companies that did the keynotes? Or I'd like to hear more about that from one or both of you or all of you about the UC and CC combination.
Yeah, so maybe we'll go over. I don't know. Maybe we'll go over to Melissa from Blair called you out and what yeah
Sorry.
what did you hear about that, to Dave's point?
Well, I am hearing a lot about the integration and like you said, Dave, I think it depends on the company and the message that they're trying to get out. So contact center only companies are not going to be promoting the need for for the two of them to be combined. And I guess, Michael, I agree with Blair in the sense that I think there's a lot of advantages for organizations to have that blended environment. But I am not sure that for really complex contact centers,
Right.
that's a long-term viable solution, in the sense that you've got a development stream from a manufacturer's point of view. You've got a development stream on the UC side to continue delivering these capabilities and features and put AI and everything and all of that. And then on the CC side, you've got your basic queuing and routing, and then you start adding on all these different capabilities, workforce management and speech analytics and quality and recording. And I mean, there's just so much in every one of those add-on capabilities that are no really add-ons. I mean, they're essential to a complex contact center. And then you're starting to add AI into all of it too. And so is it really feasible for a company to continue R&D in all of those different areas? I mean, even the large contact center only manufacturers still have weaknesses in areas like those add-ons, where third-party vendors still have a niche because they do it better. And so, I think it's going to still end up being what that organization needs and how complex their contact center is, as to whether they can really do a platform play. Because I don't see the vendors really being able to keep up with R&D in all of those areas and do it well.
So if I can add something, I totally agree, and it has to do with complexity and sophistication and things like that. But I think what we're seeing from companies like Cisco and some others is they're leveraging like the AI that they have, like noise cancellation. They're leveraging what they have on the UC side or the meeting side and taking that and using it for their contact center solution. So I think we are seeing companies, some of the large companies that you're talking about, being able to leverage the technologies from one side and use it on the other. But totally, the really large, complex, the real sophisticated types of contact centers, no, they're not going to be using an integrated solution. They're going to be using a best of breed. But I think the SMBs, we're definitely starting to see it.
Yeah, I think that's where it needs to be. Sorry, Kevin.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I think it's part of it's a marketing thing too, right? Like if you're WebEx or Zoom and you have contact center strength, to compete against Teams as, potentially the incumbent on the UC side, your beachhead becomes contact center because, Microsoft doesn't have their own native contact center. So I think that's a smart marketing play. Hey, there's a question from from one of the audience members here. I think this references, what you said, Dave, in the New York City. Also, maybe I'll turn it over to John because Blair talked about, as a fellow Canadian, John, Air Canada, although I think Blair called it Canada Air, but that's okay because anybody, south of the border, you don't need to understand anything that happens here in Canada. But certainly in the Air Canada, case, there was like this small claims court decision that held a chatbot from Air Canada. The ruling is that the company, the chatbot represented the company. And so I think it was an $890 Canadian decision, which is like, I don't know, $500 US. But anyway, so a small decision, but it got tons of play. But I don't know, John, did you want to comment on this or what, or you can move into it and talk about something else. But eventually let's get to Steve's question here.
Yeah, well, I'll just comment to Steve's question. None of us are lawyers here.
We need Martha Byers.
Well, that's what I was about to say. So this is a Martha Byers moment. And she and I, we're collaborating a lot more now. And I've been, one of my call outs for 2024 trends is pushback is going to be real on AI this year. And these types of things are not real big examples of it yet. But when the lawsuits start to hit and become real, that's when it starts to cost companies for putting too much faith or moving too fast with this stuff. Again, to the earlier comment, if you make it customer facing, you're asking for a lot of trouble if you aren't really all over it. And so there's going to be more of this. There's going to be people, taking the wrong pill at the wrong time of day because that's what the bot said, and they'll die. And, the pharma companies will take the hit. I think this is part of the pendulum of, this rush to do everything AI, but obviously it's not ready for everything that we think it should be ready for. And because there's a real FOMO thing here, everyone is rushing to get out as fast as possible. And so, Steve, I don't have a legal opinion on this one, but it's to me, if I'm in school studying law, this is the place to be, AI and digital law, because these rules haven't been written yet, and they need to be quickly. I've been commenting recently about the EU AI Act, and it's setting a pretty good template for balancing, innovation versus regulation, and speaking to the issues about risk and what really is, problematic versus not, because you have to balance the amount of risk posed by the application as well as the market impact that the AI player can bring. So when you talk about big players who can move the needle, that's when the costs start to get really high. That's why the penalties in the EU are so high for non-compliance. So this is, I think, Kevin, this will be hopefully more of a topic for next year's Enterprise Connect. So, Steve, no definitive answer, but we're going to have to pay a lot more attention to this for sure, because there's going to be a cost. As we think about deploying AI in these organizations, they're going to have to build in some factors for this stuff. I just want to come back to Dave's earlier comment. When last year, as you say, Dave, AI was a bigger theme then, because, Gen AI was such a novelty. It's something everybody could touch and play with and experience. This year, there isn't something like that that's new. I mean, LLM is the big thing this year, but that's so obtuse that no one really knows what to do with it unless you're a data scientist. It's not something we're going to play with ourselves. So it's like, okay, it's a big trend, but it's not for everybody. But it is taking us to this territory of making it more real. To the comment about UC versus CC, it just speaks to how complicated the market is. I mean, Dave, you saw it too. Like Genesis is doing great, NICE is doing great, Five9 is doing great. Even TalkDesk is still making some noise. So there's definitely room in the market for that piece. And what I find interesting is you say, what was the big thing this year? Dave, when we did that interview with Rob for UC Today, we said all contact center. And I think if you walked into that show as a newbie, you might think this was a contact center show. And I think what's interesting here is the UC players, Microsoft, Zoom, Cisco, all their Dialpad, they're all running to bring CC into it, Ring, of course, all the cloud players, because they have to, because that's where the money is, and that's where the opportunity is. That's where the bigger problems are that need to be solved. So they have a lot to gain because UC is so saturated now. So there's more upside for them to go to contact center. And yet it's the contact center vendors who are making the biggest noise at this show. And I think that reflects the reality of maybe some dynamics in the market that right now, you know what, these pure play contact center guys actually are doing really, really well because they are solving the most complicated problems in the most sophisticated ways. And they're not missing UC in the equation at all. It's not necessary for what they're doing. And I think it just speaks to now all the Ciscos of the world say, we got to have contact center. This used to be a telecom show. Now it's becoming a contact center show. And if we don't have the goods, you know, this show, we're not going to have any traction because the other guys are just going to take over. So I just found that was a very interesting dynamic in the mix of who's making the most noise and really what the motivations are of these vendors.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, John. I mean, I thought like last year, 2023, it was all about contact center, and this year it was about contact center and AI. And of course, AI, you know, because the contact center is so quantified, I mean, that's where you can prove an ROI a lot easier, right? So that's why contact center plus AI makes a lot of sense. But let's turn it over to Ted Colton. I mean, Ted, you know, we've got Ted and David kind of who focus more on video, but I don't know, Ted, is that what did you take away from Enterprise Connect 2024?
Well, first of all, always great to join everybody. And I really like what John said, maybe moving from his comments and moving back. Big presence from the contact center. And when you look at the investments that companies are contemplating, when we look at these licensing models as opposed to large language models, I think licensing models for generative AI is a real big concern for companies. Are we really going to pay $30 per user per month for generative AI? And then I think there is still confusion, even though last year was the emergence of AI. I think there's three camps of AI. There's AI, which is machine learning based, which, as Blair said, is noise block and those sorts of things. Then there's generative AI, which, you know, as Steve asked the question of us, do we really want generative AI at the front and answering on our behalf? Probably not, based upon, you know, the case with the airline, and the lawsuits will come. But then there's this third, and I like to think of it as assisted AI or assisted intelligence or assistive intelligence, if you will. And I think that's where people are finally landing. It's like, hey, we don't want this to really take over and be that contact center agent, or be the forefront of our communications to our buyers and partners and the ecosystem at large. But I think people are comfortable with saying, well, if it can help me, if it can be assistive in my daily work, then I'll consider it. And it makes me feel a little more confident about that. But I think Enterprise Connect overall, I think for me, it really was, as John said, I think there's 3 or 4 distinct camps that participate there. Of course, it's always one of the best networking events for the industry, for the collection. But if you look at it, there's the meeting room technology companies or the headsets or, you know, the equipment, if you will, that support these experiences where people collaborate. Then there's the platform vendors itself, whether it's Cisco or Microsoft, Zoom and others, RingCentral, all those folks. And then it really is clear. There's a delineation. It is the contact center vendors and the people that are providing there. And then the final is what I'll just call, where I spend an awful lot of my time, is the ecosystem. How do the companies, all those companies, come together with their partners to ultimately implement and delight the customer? But I really enjoy the conversation. And I think there's still this, even in the very first session, people were talking about machine learning or traditional AI, which is algorithms generated by machine learning, which effectively helps us track us as we move or cancel background noise. That's AI of the past, but we're really moving to what is this generative, or I like to think of it as assistive AI. I think this is the new frontier. And the last thing I noted is it came out a couple of days ago, Microsoft, following its EU decision to unbundle Teams from Microsoft 365, has now in the last 48 hours announced, moving ahead, Teams is unbundled from Microsoft 365. So as Microsoft contemplates $30 per user per month for Copilot against its install base, now companies, as they come up for renewal, are going to ask the question, is Teams worth the price independent of my Microsoft?
No, Ted, you got that one way wrong. There's
Good.
one little asterisk on that announcement from Microsoft. Doesn't affect existing customers. They already have all the Fortune 500.
Right.
They've already
No.
got every customer in the world, and so
Whenever I can poke Dave and get him a little excited, I'm excited. This will be an issue down the road. It's not
some
happening
new
today.
company in 3 years from now is going to have to evaluate that $30 a
That's
month.
correct.
Nobody that
That's
we know
correct.
is going to have to evaluate that.
Yeah,
No,
but if
not today.
you're buying Office and you don't buy Teams, that's just a bad play because everything of
True.
Office is brought together in Teams. So you're going to pony up the $5, right? Where you pony up the $30, that's a different question. And of course, Microsoft is, what I love is Microsoft is unbundling while WebEx is creating their suite and throwing things in, including Contact Center Basic. Zoom just keeps adding more and more things. So I like that, and it's kind of that Microsoft is unbundling, which has worked really. The bundle has always been their mainstay proposition, while everybody else is now bundling. So I think that's interesting, and it makes Microsoft licensing more complicated. But I think 5 years ago, this unbundling of Teams would have made a difference. Today, as Dave said, everybody who's bought whatever 320 million monthly active users. I think it's too little, too late in terms of stopping the market force, right?
But
So
they need
yeah.
need to be on the right side of regulation. That's why they're doing it, and it's coming. It'll come here.
Right.
It'll come to Asia Pac, and
The bigger story, John, is they're doing it because Slack filed a complaint because of anti-competitive practices.
Right.
Salesforce actually was at the conference and made an announcement, but nothing from Slack. Slack is gone. Nobody cares about Slack. So talk about a little too late. I mean, Microsoft's like, hey, Slack's gone. Our competitors are gone. WebEx is, or Cisco Spark, whatever you want to. They're all gone. So we're going to go ahead and unbundle and charge you extra for it now. That's just yeah.
Well, let's move on to our best radio voice person, David Maldo, with the best microphone and the best voice. What did you hear and see at Enterprise Connect 2024?
No, is it okay if I don't talk about AI?
Absolutely, you can talk about anything.
Oh, so you're done. Thank you for participating.
Yeah, it's been nice to be here. But I was thinking, well, particularly from the video and UC side, the way our industry has matured, it was like our industry was a toddler, a 3-year-old for 40 years, and all of a sudden it's a teenager. It just completely changed. And in some ways it's more exciting than ever because of the AI and everything. But in some ways, some of the magic is gone because we all love a puzzle to solve, like a Da Vinci Code. And we had this big puzzle, which was the adoption of UC and video was a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what it should be. We all knew this is the way to live. This is the way to work. This is the way to communicate with people. This stuff is good. Why isn't the world using it? And we were looking for this magic bullet that's going to fix the problem. And Kodian has universal connectivity. The world's going to finally start using this stuff. It's going to be great. LifeSize has 720p. The world's going to finally start using this stuff. It's going to be great. The RMX has whatever. And I loved that. I loved going down to the trade show, to the floor, and walking around the booth and seeing, this is the big thing we've been waiting for that's going to fix all our problems. And now all our problems are kind of fixed. It's not a matter of should the world use it. It's which of the big 4 options, all of which are good, by the way, is the best fit for my company, which is the best licensing plan, which is the best integrations. It's not a matter of we need to convince the world we have this big puzzle to solve. We've solved it. We're taking a victory lap. So it feels very different. So now, like, just look at the conversation we've been having. It's all been about the differences between Microsoft and RingCentral and Teams, and it's just a completely different world for us. So I'm happy in a way, but I miss the innovation. Did anyone see anything on the trade show floor that were like, guys, come over, David? People used to grab me, David, come see this, come see this. No one grabbed me this year, which is a good thing. Right.
There was no 3D, right? Didn't see any 3D, did you?
There were puppies. Oh no, there were older dogs. But
they were adorable.
There was the Bissell Foundation, and I
them.
want to do a LinkedIn Live because I saw those puppies, and I think that was Five9 teamed up with the Bissell Foundation to kind of help with some of these rescue dogs or whatever. So any final comments? This was great as usual. This just all different opinions from all different sides to help explore these topics. Any final
All right,
thoughts? You know,
got to
go
take a poll. Should
take a
we
poll.
have no sessions on Thursday? Yes.
Sorry.
We end Wednesday night when the show floor closes.
No, I like the
Um,
lock note, and you did a good, you did that speech tech one on Thursday morning, and it's eerily quiet. I took a picture, and it's like a ghost town because all the vendors have left. So I don't know, the lock note, I enjoy that. But okay, so
Well,
does
thanks. Yeah,
anybody else like
all of it
like?
good, but get everything done Wednesday, and then we'll all go home happy.
I have to keep questioning, a lot of these generative AI examples that I'm seeing, and I feel a lot of it is a solution chasing a problem. But I had somebody sent me a spreadsheet, and it was a form. It was a travel form, and they wanted my flights, and they wanted my flight information,
Right.
all that stuff. So I filled it all out, and I was about to, I reattached it to an email or a reply, and I was just about to hit send, and I said, oh, generate an email, whatever. I thought, okay, I'll do it. I'll click the button, and it wrote this beautiful email. It was like, dear so and so, here is I've attached below the document that you asked for. It has all the information that you requested. It's just like 3 paragraphs. It's beautiful, beautiful. It's like, wow. It actually looks pretty good. I think I'll keep it. And I hit send. And they showed in one of the keynotes, one of the things that you can do with generative AI is you get behind in your email. So have Copilot summarize all your emails and everything. And it's going to be like, oh, Dave sent you a form. So, oh, good. Now I don't have to read those 3 paragraphs. It's like, so it's adding a bunch of crap on the front end. It's taking it out of the back end, and we call it a success. And it's like, just don't use it. Just don't use it. So
Well, I heard, Dave, to your point, when I was in New York City Collaboration Week, one person said, I get these emails, they're written by people, they're way too verbose. I know that the person didn't write it. So then I use Copilot to summarize it. So here we have basically an email that wasn't written by a human, that was not read by a human. Yeah, this is, and here's a Venkat kind of summarizes this. You just need the human in the loop and not completely rely on it. And I think that that's absolutely good advice. Enterprise Connect AI. So, well, I mean, this one felt like Enterprise Connect AI, but Enterprise Connect AI is happening October 1st and 2nd in Santa Clara. Not a lot of details yet, except for the dates and the place. I'm not sure if there can be more AI discussed than at the Gaylord Palms last week. But any final thoughts on
the
Enterprise
program
Connect?
brochure is going to be very verbose. I'm sure. I'm just
Oh,
sure.
yes. It'll be all generated by Gen AI.
So I don't have a comment about that. So I do have a comment about next year's keynote. So we were talking about, how it's become a contact center show, but the keynotes are all, the typical UC vendors that also offer contact center stuff. So I'm wondering if we're going to see, a NICE or a Five9 or a Genesys on the keynote stage one of these days. Because if it is becoming the contact center show we're talking about, then that should happen.
Mm-hmm.
I would certainly welcome that and like that. I want to just call out, actually, because I watched all the keynotes now, and I watched them very closely. I want to call out Ring Central because I think they did a great keynote. And I want to call them out specifically because they were the smallest company on that keynote stage. And you had Microsoft on the keynote stage, which is like the biggest company in the world. And I think Ring Central really held their own. I think that they really did. I'm not going to say. I'll say they were as good as, or as good as the others. And I think they had a really good story. And I thought that was impressive, considering the size difference.
Well, and they also told it, John and Kira. They told it in Esther. Right? They told it in a very human way. It was very easy to relate to them. They didn't throw a lot of mumbo jumbo at you. They were just getting at problems, and I thought it was good. And I like that kind of tag team approach because the one they had a few of those. Eric was doing a fireside chat. I think it was the Google one. They were just standing and looking at each other and talking back and forth. And boy, that was hard to watch.
I showed up for those fireside chats to see the fire. There was no fire in any single
fire,
one.
no chat.
It was pretty awkward. Yeah, it was like yes, absolutely. So, well, thank you all to the BC Strategies experts. I'm sure there's a lot of topics that came up. in terms of teams unbundling, UCAS, CCAS. Blair, we still wanted to talk about in a next Industry Buzz podcast, is AI going to reduce contact center agents? I think there's pros and cons on that. So thank you for joining us. And until next time, take care. Bye for now.
Okay. Bye all.
Bye.